Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video I've decided to do a tier list video, and I know these bang views on YouTube, so I've decided to do a couple of these as well. Now the first one that I'm going to be starting off with is something that I'm a little bit more comfortable with myself, and that's just going to be ranking different martial arts and how effective they are and which one you should do. Now I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, I have seen this video done by Sensei Seth, so I'm literally just ripping him off completely, but shout out to him. So if you guys want to check out his original video, make sure to do that as well. Alright, now before we do start this tier list video, I do just have to say as well that this is completely my opinion, and I'm no expert in any of these martial arts, so do take everything I say with a grain of salt. And without further ado, let's start with the tier list. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is go through the ranking with you guys. As you can see at the very top, we have top G. If you do these martial arts and you learn them and you master them, you know that you've made it. You're in the top 1%. This is where you want to be. These ones are a must learn and you need to do them. Then we have Don't Mess With Me. Now, if anyone does do these martial arts, then you know you should not mess with them, because it's going to end very poorly for you, especially like say for example if you're on a night out or something like that. Better be aware of these guys. Now the next topic that we have is pretty cool. These are just martial arts that you know are very good. They're probably effective in some scenarios, but you know there is probably a couple of them that could be better. Then we have meh. This is just alright, nothing too special, nothing too bad. Then we have unoriginal. This is the section of the martial arts where basically, in my opinion, you know, you should just probably spend your time learning something else, or it's more of something whether you don't want to learn it as your first couple of martial arts because they're not as effective. So probably spend your time learning something like the fundamentals first and then move on to these, more of like a novelty, I would say. And then we have special. This is literally, it's in its name, it's a special martial art. I would probably recommend you stay away from it unless you're like a martial art nerd or you just want to learn it because you think it's pretty cool. Alright, first things first, we have BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This is probably, it goes without question that it's the most effective thing in MMA, in mixed martial art. In UFC, you would always, people say the person who controls the ground game controls whether the fight's going to be stood up or on the ground. So it's pretty blatant that we have to start with putting this as top G. I would still recommend that you learn this after you do a couple of the other ones, but in terms of most effectiveness, this is by far the most effective martial art that you could do. Just look at Royce Gracie when he was back in the UFC, just running through everyone in the competition. No one could stand up next to him, even if they were bigger, stronger than him. It all came down to his technique and, you know, specialty in his grappling that made him win. Alright, so second we have karate, and as a Taekwondo man myself, this is like the nemesis. But karate is a very cool sport. It is very similar to Taekwondo, but very different in the same, in the same stance. I would have to put karate in pretty cool. It's one of the fundamental sports where you should learn. Obviously, not just karate, but something like karate, say for example, or Taekwondo, because they are so similar. It basically teaches you how to kick correctly, which if you think about in terms of actual martial arts, you have a couple of components. You have stand-up and you have grappling. And if you want to break stand-up even further, you have obviously striking with your hands and you have striking with your legs. And I think karate focuses a lot on striking with your legs and has obviously some striking with your hands as well. So it's a pretty cool sport to do in that sense, and it's gained a lot of popularity over the past few years, especially with shows like Cobra Kai and The Karate Kid. Those were like very big movies that came out, so you do have to try and find a good dojo to be able to train in those. Otherwise the sensei might just be there for getting a quick cash grab. So do look around, and if you do find a solid gym, you will get a very good martial art out of it that you could probably use to defend yourself as well. Alright, so next on the list we have Aikido. This is a Japanese martial art as well, and what this is, like similar style to Judo, I would say, where it's to do with like self-defense and using your opponent's weight and momentum against them to throw them down on the ground. So it's similar to that. Personally, I've never done Aikido before, but Andrew Tate talks about it a lot, so how bad could it really be? I will probably put this in meh, maybe pretty cool. I'm not too sure, just because I haven't done extensive research on it, so I can't give you too much fact-based data on it. As someone who just talks through his opinion based, I'll probably put this between pretty cool and meh. I'm not too sure where to place it at the moment, but I might just rearrange it at the end of it when we're just gonna take a brief look at the rankings at the very end, but at the moment I'm going to put it pretty cool. I think it's very useful in certain scenarios. Say for example, you're like at a club and someone like puts their hand on your shoulder and they're like pulling you back to just talk to you or argue with you because they've had a couple of drinks. Then maybe in that scenario you could probably use their weight against them and do like a judo throw and like slam them to the ground, or obviously aikido style, and defend yourself that way. So probably has its own uses in some certain conditions, so I'll probably keep it between pretty cool for now. Next on the agenda we have sumo. Now this is pretty much why I actually had the special category brought onto it. Obviously you've all seen sumo wrestlers. They're very big, strong, powerful men. It's not a sport for everyone, and if you really want me to put that, I could even put sumo and don't mess with me, because realistically who in their right mind would ever like confront a sumo wrestler? It just wouldn't make sense. Yeah, sumo wrestlers, they are extremely athletic people. They'll probably bench your entire house if they wanted to with one arm. It takes a very special and dedicated someone to actually pursue sumo. I think it's just very a novelty martial art, so it's not something for everyone, like I said already. Now we have wrestling. We had a couple different wrestlings on the list, but I just pushed them to the end of the tier list, so I'm just going to focus on freestyle wrestling because I think that is the main type of wrestling that people would do, and it's also the biggest wrestling, I should say, that does take place. I do believe freestyle wrestling is the biggest in the Olympics out of the other wrestlings, just in general as well. So this is the one that I'm going to rank. Now freestyle wrestling, I am going to put one below top G. I'm going to put it in don't mess with me. Now people might be upset with that, but the reason why I'm going to put that and don't mess with me and not top G is because in freestyle wrestling, once you get in a very dominant position, whether you are on someone's back, say for example you've got them pinned, then after that the match is over. So then you have to separate, get up, and you got the point. And the moves that you do, say for example like the suplex or the sweeps and everything else that you do, once you get in a dominant position, then the match is over. So there's no submission work, no real like hand or like wrist or leg control when it comes to trying to then further your position into being able to submit someone once you are on the ground. So I think that's where that just lacks a bit. But in terms of actual grappling and control to have your opponent while you're standing up in those exchanges, then yes, freestyle wrestling is probably a little bit better than BJJ. And I think BJJ nowadays have basically adapted to a more freestyle wrestling style during those stand-up exchanges. In terms of actual just sport versus sport, I would put BJJ higher in the list. Then we have Taekwondo. Obviously this is going to be a little bit biased because I've been doing it for about 5-6 years. I have got my black belt in that probably about 2-3 years ago, so I am going to have a more biased opinion on it, but I'm trying to stay as more like cool and level with it, and I'm going to put it in pretty cool, and I am going to put it behind karate, or as other people like to say, karate. Yeah, the reason why I'm going to put it behind karate is because in Taekwondo there is no punching, and obviously if I want to be a little bit more fair in this argument, I do have to give karate a slight advantage, because in Taekwondo you do only have one legal punch, and that is a straight punch to the body. Literally nothing that you do with your hands except block. Now in terms of actual technique and the way you do perform the kicks, it is a little bit different to karate, and different sport is very different to other sports like Muay Thai, kickboxing and things like that. So, and I would consider Taekwondo probably the best kicking technique method to do it, to be able to do it. So in terms of kicking, I don't think there is a better sport than Taekwondo, and that is why I chose to do Taekwondo in the first place anyway, because from all the research that I did do, I find it that Taekwondo has got the best kicking that there is. So yeah, I think Taekwondo should be on pretty cool. It is extremely flashy, some of the kicks that they do. It is extremely effective, and I think it is a sport where you should look into and actually practice. And Taekwondo does get a lot of hate in terms of the mixed martial art community, but if people actually do decide to do the sport and spend some time and dedicate some time into it, then I think people will change their mind about it. All right, next on the list we have Sanda. Now this, once again, I've never done myself. Like a lot of the things on the list, it is more or less the same as kickboxing. It is a Chinese version of it, but it has more grappling techniques involved in it than kickboxing does. Now, the reason why we did have the tier unoriginal was for this. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not calling Sanda unoriginal. It might have even been here before kickboxing, but just because kickboxing is so much bigger than Sanda and they're so similar, you probably won't be able to find a local gym that does Sanda, and they might not even do it to a high level. I am going to put it on unoriginal, and so I would probably recommend do kickboxing or Muay Thai, which is next on the list. Now we have Muay Thai, like I said. With Muay Thai, I will put it on top G. Anyone who does Muay Thai is hard as fuck. I done Muay Thai for just under a year at K-Star. That's like the main Muay Thai schools in England, at least. I'm not sure if they do have more schools across the world, but it is like the main chain of school in England. And I did train with them for about a year, and I trained with Damien, who was a multi-time world champion. So it was a pretty high standard school, and honestly I enjoyed every single session that we went to. It's basically a take on kickboxing, but it is the Thailand version of it. It includes elbows, punching, kicking, knees, some grappling. So I think it is a very complete sport in general. I would recommend you start with something like Muay Thai if you don't want to do anything else, because realistically, if you learn Muay Thai, you practically know how to fight. You can defend yourself, and if you've seen any Muay Thai fights, like professionally, you see that the shots that they are taking are brutal. So he literally builds mental fortitude and your body as well. So you become very tolerant to pain, become a bad motherfucker. You can absolutely defend yourself and your partner if you do have a girlfriend. You could literally protect everyone, your friends, family. It's a very good sport. And I would go as far as saying that if you do Muay Thai, you could be higher than BJJ. Now, obviously, that doesn't go in the sense of mixed martial arts in terms of if you are fighting competitively, because someone who's a black belt in BJJ will probably smoke you in like less than a minute. But in terms of out in the streets and just respect amongst the masses of the people who don't know about sports, they will probably rank you slightly higher than someone who's a BJJ specialist if you were a Muay Thai fighter. So that's how that list is going to go. Then we have Western boxing, which is more or less just boxing as we know it today. Now I am going to put this in don't mess with me, because anyone who could throw hands, you realistically don't want to be doing anything stupid with them. And also the reason why it's so ranked highly is because the first thing that you're gonna do after obviously your altercation has started, throw punches. You're not gonna have space, you're not gonna have time to throw kicks at every single instance, but what you can do is throw punches, and throw punches effectively. In boxing, you are going to develop punching to another level where no other martial art is probably going to take you there. And something very special with boxing is because when you are fighting someone, they're going to be throwing punches back at you most likely as well. You're going to be more comfortable defending and dodging them if you do boxing than if you do any other martial arts, say for example Muay Thai. Something else with boxing that is extremely relevant that people might not consider is head movement. Head movement in Western boxing, like I have it on the list here, is something that other sports are nowhere near to this extent as it is predominant in boxing. You see people like making clips of like Canelo Alvarez, like bobbing and weaving and moving his head, dodging punches. You don't see that with fighters in other sports. Like, it just doesn't happen as much as it would with boxing. So something that you do develop in boxing is head movement that could quite literally save you. It comes into like a street fight or like an altercation in that sense. So I do have to put it on don't mess with me. Can't rank it in top G just because you don't do anything else beside of punching. You don't even use your elbows, you don't even use your body, you don't use your legs. So I can't rank it any higher, but I do have to put it on don't mess with me. I would probably have to put it in front of freestyle wrestling as well, for the same reason as I would have to do it with BJJ and Muay Thai for the top G tier, just because you can't, or you realistically you don't want to be wrestling outside. Now, like I said before, if you are talking in a martial arts sense, then freestyle wrestling is more effective than boxing, and it's probably more effective than Muay Thai. but you do want those prerequisites basically in terms of on the real world outside of the ring. Now we have Krav Maga. This is a brutal sport. Krav Maga has a pretty badass story. It's actually a martial art developed by the Israeli military to basically teach them how to fight. Now, just that alone, I could absolutely slap it in top G. Like, that sounds so fucking cool. Like, anyone that does Krav Maga is a real G. I could probably even put it in front of Muay Thai and BJJ, because anyone that does that martial art, you can quite literally neutralize and immobilize any target. They will teach you how to defend against incoming threats, whether that's punches, kicks, any weapons like knives, any like ground strikes or takedowns. So it's a pretty complete martial art, and it's not focused on a martial art, if you know what I'm trying to say to you. It's not focused on actual techniques rather than real life scenarios, because obviously they've introduced it for the military, so it's going to be what is most likely your opponent going to do in an outside real world situation rather than inside the ring. So I do have to put it as number one. It is a very brutal and graphic martial art, I would have to say, so it's not for the faint-hearted, it's not for everyone, and it's probably not something that you're going to find at your local gym. You probably have to search for it to actually find the place that does teach you. Probably is getting a little bit more popular now amongst the very like special minority of people that are training it, so it is probably growing in that sense, so it might get bigger. At the moment, anyone that can find a good gym that does do Krav Maga, you should probably do it. I can't recommend it enough, because it will teach you world life scenarios that you can defend yourself against, and that includes weapons, which the rest of the like martial arts on the list pretty much do not cover. So yeah, it does have to go as number one. Then we have Judo. Judo, I have to put meh, and bear with me while I discuss why I have put it there. Now with Judo, it is a very cool sport to learn, so you might think, why am I not putting it pretty cool? But the issue that I have with Judo is, as soon as you throw your opponent down, the martial art is over. Like, you're pretty much done over there. You don't do anything else. If you've downed your opponent, you then want to be able to inflict damage. You want to be able to do something. You want to then start striking, or you want to submit him. In Judo, you have to do just like grab your opponent and throw him. A lot of the techniques that you do use, obviously you use the opponent's momentum, you do use like your center of gravity, you learn all of that stuff, but a lot of the things and techniques you have to use the gi itself, so like the uniform that you're wearing. So you have to get like your hands on your sleeve, your opponent's sleeve. Those type of things are probably not going to be available to you every single time that you do have an encounter, so I do have to put it in there. And also another thing with Judo, in a real world outside scenario, you realistically don't want to be getting that close and personal to be able to fully grab onto someone's like neck, their body, their sleeve, their like wherever you're grabbing onto, to be able to throw them on the ground. That's quite a risky move to do. So what I would like recommend you guys is to do something else, so you are a little bit more experienced with controlling the distance rather than actually having to get super close to your opponent or someone who is trying to basically start a fight with you guys. Then we're moving on to Kung Fu. Now Kung Fu is, I think, the like longest, or one of the longest at least, martial arts out there. I do want to say that it is Chinese as well, if I'm not mistaken, but I do not know too much about Kung Fu, but I do know that the people that do train it, even travel to China, do perform it in the Shaolin temples, are extremely dedicated people. They, you know, it's not for someone who wants to just pick up another martial art. It's almost like becoming a new person for people that do want to take it seriously. Now, one of my mentors that I did like speak with and train with for a couple of months did actually go to the Shaolin temples and train there for a few months, or maybe it was a couple of years, I'm not too sure, but he was telling me that the things that they were doing is out of this world. Like, the people that train there are capable of things that you would not be able to imagine. So in terms of the things that you could achieve, it's pretty much limitless. Probably gain the most out of Kung Fu than any other sport, because it's been around for so long. There's so many different styles, there's so many different techniques. You could probably learn everything. You could learn how to fight with weapons and all sorts of different things. I could realistically put it anywhere on the list, but because just don't see people being super like effective in terms of nowadays with like MMA in the UFC, Bellator, Cage Warriors. When you don't see it in these big promotions, you don't see so many kung fu schools around, it's just not as popular. I probably have to put it in the bottom end of pretty cool, because it is still very effective, and some of the techniques that they do teach you, you could probably still use, but I just don't see how I could put it higher than pretty cool for the majority of people that are going to be doing it. All right, now we have Wing Chun on the list. I'm just gonna straight away put it in meh. I'm gonna put it in there just because you have to be, as far as I'm concerned, very close quarters, and it's not significant strikes, but more fast strikes that your opponent can't see and block. So I'm gonna put it in meh. I just don't see any schools that teach it. I don't see anyone practicing Wing Chun. I don't hear any professional athletes or major athletes that train it, so I have to put it in meh. I just don't see anyone being able to get too much benefit from training Wing Chun rather than spending their time learning other martial arts, for example boxing or BJJ in the meantime. All right, now we have Sambo on the list. Straight away I'm gonna have to put it in don't mess with me, because I think the first person that does come up to mind is Khabib. Now, when Khabib was doing Sambo and then he came onto the UFC, he absolutely dominated everyone. Just look at his performances. Undefeated, 29 wins, 0 defeats in his professional bouts in MMA, and it just shows that, you know, Sambo is a complete sport pretty much. It does striking and grappling, so it's pretty good. You could probably mix and match if you want the don't mess with me category, because it just depends on what you're a little bit more interested in, whether you want to learn how to throw punches, whether you want to mix everything up so you do somewhat of like an MMA style format of sport, or if you just want to focus on the grappling. So you can kind of mix and match those ones, but I would personally put it above the other two because it is a mix of all of them, and so it kind of teaches you a little bit of everything, so you're a little bit more well-rounded. Moving on to Tai Chi, forget unoriginal, I'm gonna have to put it on special. It's pretty much nothing effective in terms of inflicting damage to your opponent. It's more or less, people call it shadow boxing because it is pretty much that. You don't actually strike any opponents, you don't do anything. It's more almost like a meditation martial art, so I do have to just leave it at special. I can't do anything. I will have to bring it even lower than sumo, because sumo wrestlers are, like discussed previously, they're pretty strong. They could probably hurt anyone average. They could, no, sorry, they could probably kill an average person, but they could hurt a professional fighter as well, like pretty severely. Then we have kickboxing. Kickboxing is very similar to Muay Thai. I will probably bring it a little bit lower than Muay Thai. I'll bring it in the don't mess with me category, but I will put it in front of boxing but before Sambo. And the reason why I'm going to put it lower than Muay Thai, even though they are very similar, is because of the striking that you do perform. So the difference between the striking is, in Muay Thai you do have the use of your elbows and knees, while in kickboxing you don't. So I think there's just no way that I could rank it the same, or even some people would say higher, just because of that, because elbow strikes are extremely effective, especially knee strikes to the body and to the head if you can land them flush. You've seen the biggest like gushes of blood and cuts come from elbows in the UFC if you have seen them. I just can't put it any higher than don't mess with me, because it's not as complete as the other sports that we have, and I have to put it above boxing and wrestling because you do have kicking involved in it, so it's not just punching like boxing. And in wrestling, like we said before, you're not gonna have to go to ground, so you can just fight off everyone else while standing up. But the reason why I can't put it above Sambo is because Sambo is a little bit more complete. It's almost like a mixed martial art itself. All right, so to be honest with you, I had no idea what Lithway was before making this tier list, and if you couldn't tell already, I actually never made this tier list. It's already on Tier Maker, so I've just researched about Lithway, and it is almost like kickboxing, but there's some moves like headbutting that's allowed. Now I'm not sure how effective that would be outside, but it's more or less very similar to kickboxing, so I'm probably just going to put it on unoriginal. Now don't get me wrong, like I've said before, unoriginal does not mean that the sport is not effective. It just means that, you know, the sport isn't as mainstream as the other like counterparts to it. Capoeira I just said capybara. Capoeira is a very cool sport. I actually was going to start it before I did jiu-jitsu or before I done Muay Thai, because I was extremely interested in it, but I have to put it on special just because of the techniques are more showmanship rather than actually effective. I mean, it was the origin story of Capoeira is the prisoners in Brazil were trying to learn how to fight without the prison guards actually like getting onto them, and the way that they done that, the way they were training, is that they invented Capoeira, which is a form of dance martial art. So that's why you see people wearing those traditional pants, and they play or they dance to that music while they are actually performing the martial art. Now, it could be effective, and there are a couple of fighters in the UFC, I do believe, that are Capoeira masters and do use the couple of techniques in the fights, but they are more flashy rather than straight linear effective strikes. So I do have to put it in the special category and can't realistically put it in the other one. However, some of the strikes are extremely effective, and I think there was a YouTube like one episode documentary or something where they were trying to show like what kick can generate the most amount of power, and I think the Capoeira one was the number one on that list. So technically it is an extremely effective strike. You know, I have to put it in specialty because of its martial arts style itself. Now, Luta Live is next up, and it's more or less similar to BJJ. It's also in it's also a Brazilian martial art. I have to put it in unoriginal because I think it's nowhere near as popular or as mainstream as BJJ. However, there are a couple of minor differences between them, like every other martial art on the unoriginal category. Don't wear gis like you do in BJJ, but BJJ has gone so mainstream that every school pretty much practices gi and no gi. I mean, that difference you could probably just rule out straight away. So far I've researched into it, they've basically just point out that it's a lot more aggressive and it's a lot more like high paced, fast paced than BJJ, and the people that do train it, like I said before, are just more aggressive in the things that they do. Now, the last three things that you do see, they're more or less just wrestling. So I have just decided to leave those out of the tier list in general. So far that we can see, the tier list to me does look pretty good. I don't think I'm gonna change anything in it. Yeah, I think the tier list does make sense to me the way it is. The things that I have listed at top G, if you do learn those, then you are someone that no one wants to fuck with. If I were to probably give you guys a couple of martial arts to start off with, just in my personal opinion, I would say do something either karate or taekwondo to get your kicking game up in terms of striking. Definitely do boxing to get your hands going. If you don't want to do those two, boxing and taekwondo or karate, then do a sport like kickboxing or Muay Thai to get your striking up to standard, or Krav Maga in that case if you can find a good school. And in terms of grappling, I would definitely say BJJ number one, and if you can't find a BJJ school, which would be pretty rare nowadays, then you would definitely be sorted with freestyle wrestling. Now, there is no freestyle wrestling near me, so I just didn't get into wrestling that much, but I have trained BJJ, and it's probably the most fun martial art that I've ever done. I enjoyed the most, even out of striking, even though striking is extremely fun. There's just a different sensation you get when you manage to tap someone out, especially if they are a higher belt than you. So, you know, I do have to rank that very highly. So in terms of if you do want to start and you just don't know where to get into it, Taekwondo, karate for the kicking, boxing or Muay Thai in terms of punching and striking just in general, and BJJ number one recommendation, or freestyle wrestling for grappling if you can't get BJJ or you just don't like it. So that's my tier list video done for you guys in terms of martial arts and their effectiveness and what I think about them. Make sure to leave a comment down below to let us know if you agree with my list or not. I am going to be doing a couple of more tier list videos as well because they do very well on YouTube and people do seem to enjoy them as well. Make sure to check out that, as we are going to be probably doing a new playlist on all of this as well. I will see you guys next time in the tier list video, and that will be hopefully about something different and not about martial arts, so a lot of other people could probably tune into those as well. Anyway, take care for now. I will see you guys very soon. Peace.